Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to signs that you're a highly sensitive person and or an empath. So I'm going to kind of go over 17 signs. Now you can Google search this and read all sorts of different blogs on it, and a lot of them kind of regurgitate a lot of the same information. But during this video I will share a lot of things that I've noticed throughout my life from childhood to adulthood that kind of made me realize that I just operate differently than a lot of other people, and I've come to realize that I am highly sensitive, but I don't know if I guess I'm an empath too. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So a lot of people say that there is a difference between a highly sensitive person and then an empathic person, and although that is true, I do feel a lot of them share very similar qualities. Some people can just be sensitive in nature, like their constitution or their physiology is more sensitive than others. And since I've been working in fitness since 2006, I have noticed that there definitely is a difference between various people. But overall, people who are more empathetic or just sensitive in general, they share a lot of the same similar qualities. So a highly sensitive person, also known as HSP for short, is kind of a term that's used to for people who have an increased or deeper central nervous system that is sensitive to physical, emotional, or social stimuli. So some researchers that have come out with all this information from the mid 90s have said that these people are too sensitive, or it's called sensory processing sensitivity, SPS in short. So kind of along with that, I think the first thing, if you are a highly sensitive person, is that you definitely have a sensitive nervous system. So basically your body can get frazzled out, or you get stressed out a little bit more easily than other people. I know in my life I cannot handle high loads of stress. It took a lot of yoga and a lot of Reiki and all that stuff through the years to train myself to become a little less frazzled, especially when entering chaotic environments. So your nervous system is just more sensitive in general. You kind of pick up on things. You get more stressful in a stressed out situation, but you can be very calm in a calming situation. The second thing that kind of piggybacks on that is highly sensitive people are actually very sensitive to light and noise. When I was a child, I could not sleep with noise in the outside of the house. Every time my dad woke up at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. and just hearing him walk down the hallway and hearing the footsteps on the carpet, it woke me up. I couldn't have one little crack through the side of my blind on the window because that light kept me awake. The crickets woke me up in the middle of the night. I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't even have the fan blowing on me during, Ohio summers where it was like 98 degrees and 90% humidity, because that feeling of the fan, not necessarily the noise of the fan, but I just couldn't have stuff blowing on me because I feel my hair, or I just feel that sensation on my skin. So a lot of people are very sensitive to light and noise, and if you look back at your childhood, you can kind of sense if you've had these issues back then. Highly sensitive people, or maybe empaths as well, are also very sensitive to real life chaos. So that goes back to your nervous system being very sensitive. You're very sensitive to the television or the chaos that you kind of see in a video game. A lot of people, I myself, I cannot watch a horror movie. I have absolutely no interest in that stuff at all, because I find it very gross and repulsive. If you read certain topics, or maybe you've dabbled or looked at pornography, like that stuff kind of is revolting to you because it's just not natural, or can be very kind of violent in general. So along with having that very sensitive nervous system, I do feel a lot of these people, their bodies naturally reject chaos, which is just from noise from the television. The news and the media just sucks and dries them down. With the guy that I'm seeing now, I haven't owned a TV since I threw it out in the trash before moving to Germany in 2014. And so he had a television, and his just thing on a Saturday morning was just sitting down and watching the news. And I remember, like, early on in this relationship, it was like frazzling me out because I couldn't stand the noise of the TV, but also it was just the news. So it was just all this drama and chaos that was being projected on the screen, and I could feel my physiology change at that time. The next thing is that you have various mood shifts. So you can become very, very negative, especially when surrounded in chaotic or negative situations. So that's why certain things, highly sensitive people can't go into really big crowds, or they can't, watch the news and be a part of that, because it just alters and shifts and changes your mood. So just like I said, when the news was playing on Saturday morning, it just really started my day on a damper, because it's just like being a sponge. Your body and your emotions are absorbing and picking up either other people's energy, whether that is the energy coming from the television or from real life situations. This one is definitely very interesting. I think highly sensitive people, their bodies reject a lot of synthetic things. In addition to, their bodies are very, very sensitive to medicine, meds, and or alcohol. So with having a sensitive nervous system, these types of bodies cannot ingest or inject certain types of things without having some form of reaction to them. Obviously, any human being can start consuming a bunch of alcohol and build up a tolerance to it. But for example, there's some people that they just don't need caffeine, because the caffeine puts them into a different mental altered state. I've had that a lot throughout my life, where I've had too much caffeine, and it's just like this rage of just being like angry or hangry. And caffeine, just like alcohol or a med or an antidepressant or drugs, it's a stimulant, and your body just cannot handle the stimulant like other people. Either whether they have other people have a bigger tolerance, or maybe their constitution is just different in general. A lot of highly sensitive people will gravitate a little bit more toward, this goes into the next point, will respond very well to holistic healing and natural healing. So for example, maybe yoga and meditation is their medication. I tend to use swimming, these day and age, in the last couple of years, I tend to use rock climbing and swimming as my mode of therapy. Whenever I've had a bad day, before coronavirus, I would go rock climbing, and there is that symbolism of the rock climbing wall is a problem, and you have to figure out that problem and kind of map out how to climb that problem to get to the top of the wall. And that's very symbolic of life. And so a lot of rock climbing, because you're stimulating different hormones during exercise, I would enter feeling crummy, and I would leave feeling great about myself and about life, because I realized that I can solve that problem. And that's why a lot of people highly sensitive people gravitate towards something like yoga, because you're trying to learn that balance on the mat, and that's very symbolic to finding the balance in life. So a lot of these people will gravitate a little bit more toward holistic healing, and will try to choose those natural methods first before resulting to synthetics through medication and such. Highly sensitive people are seekers of truth, so they question things. A lot of them question, why am I here? Who is God? What is the purpose of life? They can be very deep thinkers, because they're just naturally in tune to the more intuitive side of their body. You know, you look at the sky or the heavens, and you just have questions about those things. So they definitely don't go through life blindly, just on a consumeristic binge. They go through life questioning things and trying to learn and grow and understand themselves more. I believe a lot of highly sensitive people will travel for their soul's calling. This point is kind of linked up with the next point, which is having an interest in ancestral lineage. Throughout my life, I definitely have gravitated toward traveling to certain places, because it was just that soul's calling. Like, I've always wanted to do the Camino, and for 12 years I wanted to hike the Camino, and you know what, it finally happened at the lowest point in my life, when I was trying to heal from divorce. This is different than people who just Netflix binge, and then all of a sudden they see Seville, Spain on Game of Thrones, and they just go there or go to Forks, Washington, because Forks is the, the birthplace of Twilight and the whole vampire thing. So a lot of people will naturally go to places, or life will just guide them to places where their soul is being called or that things require healing. Since the age of 5, I wanted to go to Greece, and the moment I went to Greece and I walked up to Acropolis, I just had chills that flooded my body, and I busted out in tears, and I screamed, "I'm home!" And so to me, I was like, this is not like a logical thing. This is my soul picking up a piece of itself to heal whatever needed at that time. And interest in that ancestral lineage, a lot of these highly sensitive people will have definitely a deeper connection or want to understand certain things about the ancestral lineage. Maybe that's providing healing. Obviously, every culture in the world has gone through some form of horrible life experience. So a lot of highly sensitive people are sent on this planet to heal those wounds that have been through your ancestral lineage for decades or hundreds or thousands of years. Empaths, highly sensitive people, are also deeply empathetic. I think that one's a pretty basic one, but you just pretty much have a little bit of higher empathy than other individuals. The next point, creativity is your emotional therapy. So because a lot of people who are naturally more intuitive or a little more sensitive are operating out of a little bit more of that intuitive side of the brain, that's the gateway to creativity. So art is very healing for you. You're very much moved by art. Obviously, some people might like modern art. Other people might like fine art. Some people find healing through reggae music. Other people find it through classical music. So there's all different type of spectrum when you start to look at that. But in general, a lot of times these people will find their healing or just their sanity through either creating art or experiencing art. I used to get so emotionally attached at my job, especially because I worked with humans in a fitness wellness level, that I was just very passionate about people improving their lives. And I used to get so emotionally attached to my job and dealing with all the bureaucracy and BS at places that I just lost myself in work. And so that was part of the reason why I started doing my food blog, was because I needed an outlet of creativity, but I also needed that platform to be kind of my channel of voice that wasn't getting censored or edited out or things like that. And so I started to become emotionally attached to the work that I did, that helped me detach a little bit from my main job. So then it helped me grow to where I could detach a little bit more from the bureaucratic layers of when something gets denied or cut. I'm like, okay, my sanity is going more toward this project that's still benefiting people, because I'm being either held back at like my day job from being the best that I could be at my job. Highly sensitive people with having that more sensitive nervous system is that you kind of feel everything. You can sense when something is off. You can sense when something feels right. That is just part of your gut intuition. Let's move on to the next one. I do think highly sensitive people and empathic people do have a little bit more mental issues. That couples with having that sensitive nervous system, so you're more prone to anxiety, insomnia, because all of the stimulation, especially living through a more tech artificial world, all that stimulus from these computer devices can frazzle you out. But I also think because they're wired and tapped a little bit more on the intuitive side, you have these things like the crazy artist that, Van Gogh cut off his ear. They need to balance it out with a little bit more logic and the rational side of their brain. You want to operate with balancing your brain and not in one area or the other, which is the biggest problem of happening today. So a lot of people can have mental issues just because of that sensitive nervous system, and then operating more in the emotional side of the brain. So to kind of combat that, you have to start to pull back the emotion and learn how to have higher emotional intelligence, or learn how to manage your stress loads. you have had a very imaginative or a very kind of vibrant childhood. So did you do or say certain things? Wayne Dyer wrote a book about memories of heaven, which like children, generally they were under the age of 7, would say certain things or do certain things in their life because they've had these memories of a past life, or they were the incarnation. Say grandma died, but grandma got reincarnated into a family and had the same, this baby was born with the same birthmark that grandma had. So did you do anything in your childhood that was very either extraordinary or just very different? Kids are very imaginative in general, but a lot of times certain things that you did or gravitated toward, like in that book, I think this one lady was talking about her son just loved eating kidney beans out of a can, and he had these memories of, he just reenacted this memory of being on a railroad as like a poor railroad worker just eating beans out of a can. So like that's very different. So just look back at your childhood and see what clues were there that had insights to former life experiences. The next point, if you think if you're a highly sensitive person or very empathic, your life is just different. A lot of people in today's society, I think these millennials today, a lot of us have grown up in families that just don't understand them. I believe the soul is put in situations that are difficult because the soul has to learn how to grow. In addition, it's trying to break the ancestral lineage. It's trying to teach people something that they don't quite understand. So that's the part of the growth process and part of the ripple effect on helping humanity and society ascend. So if your life has been either very different or your family members don't understand you, this is actually kind of normal when it comes from the theory or from the perspective of the soul's incarnation. An intuitive lady that I met in Tucson, she calls them like a lot of the millennials are like the Houdini kids. So she just says a lot of these younger people are born into families that kind of reject them, and it's a lot of soul lesson for these Houdini kids to continue on that soul path, to continue preaching the more spiritual sides of life. And I think the next point, highly sensitive people and empathic people have higher awareness. So for example, coupling back on the previous point, I've known highly empathic people who've been born in really bad situations. They did not grow up in a very pleasant childhood. But if you have that higher awareness, you will choose to not repeat the same path. So for example, if you grew up in a household of domestic violence, if you have higher awareness and you're following that soul's guidance, you will not choose a partner or enter relationships and have borders and boundaries to where you will not choose men who are abusive to you physically or emotionally. A lot of times when people aren't operating through higher awareness, their childhood is the pathway to their adulthood. So if you see a lot of people or women who have relationships with husbands or partners who beat them, there is a high correlation that these people were also abused as a child. So they're continuing on the same path rather than breaking the pattern. So highly sensitive people are there to break the pattern if they follow the higher awareness. The last and final point I want to talk about is that these people just have a deep love and a care for animals. I believe the guy that I am with now is the one that I'm supposed to be with, and he has a very deep, deep love and a care, like the way he takes care of his dogs and animals and just loves people. I've never, over the last year that we've been together, I've never heard him say one bad thing about people. So he's operating, although he's very logical, he's a Virgo, he's operating in a sense of higher awareness that I think he was just born and created this way and comes from a really solid family. And I do think highly sensitive people just have that deeper bond and connection to nature. Nature is very healing to them. They feel restored after they go on a hike. This is why millennials are doing forest bathing, to get out of this addiction to the technology and more into the natural world, because the natural world is ingrained in our DNA. We are creatures from nature, creatures from a higher power. Now, if you do look at highly sensitive people, blogs online, I do not think anything should be used as an excuse. Like, for example, you'll see that they say, I think it's highly sensitive people are more introverted and they require a lot of alone time. That's very true. I used to be like that. But I do think throughout continuation of self-reflection, self-analyzing, and choosing the path of continuously growing, that you don't need as much space as what you think you do. In my first marriage, I was so happy to get space because I would come home from work earlier than he did. And throughout that loss and all that reflection through divorce, I came to realize like a lot of that was kind of actually very selfish. So when you overcome your selfish desires, now in this relationship, I really don't need much space. Maybe to do these videos because I need a quiet space to do it, but I don't need to be away from that person. And that's part of the growth and maturity. So what I'm saying is, empathic and highly sensitive people are not immune to having weaknesses. You have a lot of strengths, but there are certain things you need to overcome. If you continuously just choose yourself and just want to focus on your spirituality and that's your end goal, then that's fine. But a lot of these people are also very miserable because they cannot maintain a relationship, because they do not understand how selfish they are, or all that space that you need, or it's always about you and your emotions, that you have to understand things from other people's perspective and keep it grounded to be on this earth plane a little more. So just don't use anything as an excuse. Use this as a tool to help you reflect in your life to help you further progress. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. I hope you have a great day. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or maybe your life experiences, or maybe the signs that you've figured out that you're highly sensitive or empathic. Have a great one. Bye-bye.